General Hospital will reveal interesting facts on Thursday, May 1, 2025. First, Brook Lynn had harbored the secret of her past for far too long, burying it beneath layers of denial and pretending that time would somehow erase the guilt she carried. But no matter how many years passed, the weight of that decision gnawed at her heart. Unrelenting. It was in a rare, vulnerable moment at the Quartermain estate that she finally allowed herself to confess to Tracy the truth she had hidden from nearly everyone. In a steady but broken voice, she revealed that she had once been pregnant with Dante's child, a child she never had the chance to raise. Fear, confusion, and misplaced loyalty had all collided at once during that chaotic period of her life, leading Lois to intervene in a way that Brook Lynn could neither understand nor forgive. Without her consent, Lois had taken the child away, believing it was for the best, but leaving Brook Lynn with an aching emptiness that no amount of distraction or ambition could ever fill. With the confession laid bare between them, Brook Lynn tried to explain her current hopes, clinging to the fragile belief that adoption might offer her the fresh start she so desperately craved. She spoke carefully of the discussions she had shared with Chase, how they had both imagined building a family together, nurturing a child who could bring light into the darkest parts of their lives. Adoption, for her, represented redemption, a chance to pour all the love and protection she had been denied the opportunity to give. She knew it would never erase the past, but she believed it could give her future a new meaning. All she wanted now was to move forward, and she longed for Tracy's blessing, or at least her reluctant acceptance. In her heart, Brook Lynn yearned for her family's support, a reassurance that she was not irredeemable, that despite her mistakes, she was still worthy of love and motherhood. However, Tracy's reaction was swift and unforgiving, cutting through Brook Lynn's fragile hope with the precision of a blade honed by years of disappointment and harsh truths. Outraged at the revelation of Lois's reckless actions, Tracy's fury burned hotter than Brook Lynn had anticipated. She saw Lois's interference not as an act of protection but as an act of destruction, severing a bond that should never have been broken. Worse still, Tracy was appalled that Brook Lynn would even consider adoption when her real child was still out there somewhere, lost but not beyond reach. In Tracy's eyes, to adopt another child would be tantamount to abandoning her own flesh and blood all over again. Her harsh judgment came from a place of deep conviction. Family, bound by blood, was sacred, and no substitute could ever truly fill the void left by that loss. Faced with Tracy's unrelenting disapproval, Brook Lynn found herself spiraling into a vortex of shame and doubt, every ounce of resolve she had built crumbling under the weight of her grandmother's scorn. Part of her wanted to rebel, to insist that she had the right to choose her own path to healing, but a stronger part of her knew that Tracy's words struck a chord of undeniable truth. No matter how painful it was to admit, Brook Lynn had never truly let go of the child she lost. The ache remained, as sharp and raw as the day Lois took her baby away. Now, standing at a precipice, she realized that moving forward without confronting her past would only deepen the hollow inside her. She could no longer pretend that adopting a new child would erase the scars of the old wounds. If she wanted peace, she would have to earn it by facing the truth she had long tried to outrun. In the cold silence that followed, Brook Lynn understood that there was no easy path ahead. To find her child would mean reopening every wound, confronting Dante, Lois, and the tangled web of choices that had led her here. It would mean accepting the pain, the anger, and the possibility of rejection. Yet as she sat there, feeling the crushing expectations of her family and the crushing weight of her own conscience, she knew that there was only one course left to her. She would not take the easier road of building a new life atop a foundation of unresolved grief. She would honor the bond that could never be replaced, the life that had been taken from her, and the love that demanded she fight for it. With a heavy heart but newfound clarity, Brook Lynn made a silent vow to herself that she would find her child, no matter how long it took, and in doing so, perhaps find the parts of herself that had been lost along the way. Second, Laura had always been perceptive when it came to the tensions brewing beneath the surface of those she cared about, and now her instincts told her that trouble was inevitable. She could sense the emotional storm gathering around Lulu, even before her daughter fully realized the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Knowing how deep the friendships ran between Chase and Dante, and understanding the complicated web of emotions tangled around Brook Lynn's long-hidden secret, Laura urged Lulu to approach the coming days with caution. She gently but firmly impressed upon her the importance of maintaining peace, of being a calming influence when tempers flared and loyalties were tested. Laura knew all too well how easily anger, betrayal, and wounded pride could destroy years of hard-earned trust. And she feared that without careful intervention, the bond between Chase and Dante might shatter beyond repair. While Lulu absorbed her mother's warnings with a growing sense of unease, Chase was already moving forward, propelled by a raw mixture of hurt, confusion, and an unshakable need for answers. Having learned the shocking truth that Brook Lynn had once carried Dante's child during her teenage years, a truth hidden away from everyone, even from him, Chase could not simply let it go. The revelation gnawed at him, stirring feelings of betrayal, not just toward Brook Lynn but also toward Dante, the man he had called a brother in all but blood. It was not just the secret itself that wounded him, it was the breach of trust, the feeling that a part of his own life had been built on a lie he had never even been allowed to suspect. Chase needed to confront Dante, to look him in the eye and demand an explanation, even if he wasn't sure what he hoped to hear. When Chase finally approached Dante, the tension between them was immediate, palpable, like the charged air before a lightning strike. Both men, bound by years of friendship and shared battles, now found themselves standing on opposite sides of an invisible fault line, unsure whether the ground beneath them would hold or give way. Chase, driven by a mix of anger and heartbreak, could not mask the disappointment in his voice, nor the burning questions in his eyes. Dante, caught between guilt and defensiveness, braced himself for the impact he knew was coming. Emotions boiled just beneath the surface as old loyalties collided with new betrayals, and despite their best efforts to stay composed, it was clear that a confrontation was inevitable. Each word they exchanged, each accusation and half-hearted justification, only widened the chasm between them. As the conversation escalated, voices rose, tempers flared, and the old foundation of trust that once anchored their friendship began to crumble. Chase accused Dante of hiding the truth, of allowing him to build dreams on a foundation of deceit, while Dante, feeling cornered and raw, struggled to defend actions that even he could not fully justify. Their words, sharp and unrelenting, were laced with the kind of pain that only those who once loved each other like family could inflict. It was not simply a fight about Brook Lynn or the lost child. It was about everything that had come before, all the battles they had fought together, all the silent promises that now seemed shattered beyond recognition. Without intervention, it was a fight that could easily destroy whatever bond still remained between them. Watching the confrontation unfold with growing horror, Lulu realized that Laura had been right, and that the responsibility to preserve what could still be saved now rested heavily on her shoulders. She stepped between them, not with force but with a steady, calming presence, urging them to see beyond the hurt and betrayal, to remember the years of loyalty and brotherhood that had brought them together in the first place. Lulu knew the road to forgiveness would not be easy, that trust once broken was slow to mend, but she also understood that some bonds were too precious to abandon without a fight. In that moment, as she stood between Chase and Dante, she vowed to do whatever it took to help them find a way back to each other, because healing was not just about the child they had lost, but about the family they still had a chance to rebuild. Third, Drew found himself trapped in a situation spiraling beyond his control, one that he had never intended and could barely comprehend. What had started as an ordinary night had been carefully orchestrated into a disaster, a sinister plot designed to dismantle the fragile happiness he had built with Willow. He had been drugged. His senses dulled until he no longer remembered much of the night at all. When he finally regained clarity, it was already too late. The images had been sent, each one more damning than the last, capturing him in the most vulnerable and compromising state possible. He knew instantly who would be on the receiving end of those photos: Willow, the woman he loved and trusted. The one person he could not bear to hurt. Panic set in swiftly, followed by a sickening dread that no explanation, no matter how sincere, could undo the damage that had been done. Desperation drove Drew to seek out Willow immediately, to beg for the chance to explain the circumstances that had led to such a betrayal. He knew how it looked, how it felt, and how impossible it would be to erase the images now burned into her mind. Yet he believed that if she could just hear him out, if she could see the terror and sorrow in his eyes, she might understand that he had been a victim, not a willing participant. He pieced together the events of that night, recounting the hazy memories, the gaps in his consciousness, the feeling of disorientation, and the cruel realization that he had been targeted. What he did not know, what he had yet to fully grasp, was that sometimes the mere perception of betrayal was enough to shatter trust beyond repair, regardless of the truth. Willow listened, but not in the way Drew had hoped. Her heart, so full of love once, had become a fortress of hurt and disbelief. She heard his words, but they clashed against the roaring storm of emotions inside her, unable to penetrate the walls that pain had built. To her, the images were undeniable proof, and the explanations felt like hollow excuses. In her mind, Drew had crossed a line that love alone could not mend. The betrayal was not merely physical. It was emotional, cutting at the core of everything they had promised each other. She had given him her heart, her trust, and now it lay broken at her feet. Fragile pieces that no amount of pleading could put back together. Anger surged through her veins, not just at Drew, but at herself for believing so fully, so recklessly. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Nina observed the fallout of her plan with cold satisfaction. She had calculated each step with precision. Knowing that Drew's reputation for being trustworthy would only make his apparent betrayal sting more deeply, she had orchestrated the entire scenario, ensuring that temptation and opportunity collided under the most damning circumstances. Her goal had never been merely to expose a flaw in Drew, it was to obliterate the bond between him and Willow. To sever it in such a way that no reconciliation could seem possible. Seeing Willow recoil from Drew, seeing the disbelief and fury on her face, was the first signal that her scheme was succeeding. In Nina's mind, this was not just revenge, it was a necessary move to reclaim control in a world that had spun too far out of her reach. As Drew stood helplessly before Willow, watching the woman he loved turn away from him with cold finality, he felt a crushing sense of defeat. His heart ached, knowing that no matter how many truths he spoke, they could not erase the ugly stain of those photographs. The reality was brutal. Sometimes perception mattered more than truth, and sometimes love was not enough to survive the weight of betrayal, whether real or manufactured. Willow's pain was too raw, too immediate, for forgiveness to find purchase. And as Drew watched her walk away, each step a blow to his already battered soul, he realized that he had lost more than just her trust. He had lost the future they had dreamed of, the life they had fought so hard to build, undone by a single, merciless night. Finally, Jocelyn had known from the beginning that her involvement with the covert organization would demand sacrifices and calculated risks. But even she had not anticipated how quickly the stakes would escalate. After Vaughn, a senior operative whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was well known, conducted an impromptu evaluation of her abilities, the urgency surrounding her assignment intensified. Vaughn, unimpressed by delays and wary of exposure, made it clear that Jocelyn's window for action was rapidly closing. Her orders were unambiguous: she needed to establish direct contact with Professor Dalton, a key figure tied to sensitive information the organization sought to obtain. The assignment demanded not only speed but subtlety. And Jocelyn realized she could no longer afford to wait for opportunity to come to her, she would have to create it herself. Analyzing her limited options, Jocelyn devised a bold new plan. One that required strategic manipulation and careful positioning. She recognized that gaining Dalton's trust from the outside would take too long, and so she set her sights on Emma. Someone who moved easily within Dalton's inner circle. Emma, charming and seemingly unguarded, presented the perfect access point. With a swift recalibration of her approach, Jocelyn orchestrated a seemingly innocent encounter, embedding herself in Emma's daily routine and gradually forging a connection that appeared natural. Every interaction was calculated to build rapport, every casual conversation layered with hidden intentions. Yet as Jocelyn edged closer to her target, she began to notice subtle inconsistencies in Emma's behavior, fragments of secrets that did not quite fit together. The more time Jocelyn spent around Emma, the more she realized that the young woman was hiding something far more complex than personal insecurities or academic rivalries. There were moments when Emma's reactions betrayed a deeper knowledge of the forces at play, hints of a double life that mirrored Jocelyn's own in ways too precise to be coincidence. Certain phrases Emma used, the guarded way she changed subjects when anything related to Dalton surfaced, and her uncanny awareness of movements around the campus all pointed to a larger truth. Jocelyn's instincts, honed sharper through Vaughn's relentless training, flared with certainty. Emma was not just a student with privileged access, she was a player in the same dangerous game, operating under a facade as carefully constructed as Jocelyn's. As the realization crystallized, Jocelyn found herself navigating an even more treacherous landscape than she had initially understood. Emma was not simply an obstacle, she was a wild card, a potential threat, or perhaps even an unwitting ally, depending on how the pieces fell. Jocelyn had to reassess every move she made, balancing her original objective against the growing necessity to uncover Emma's true role in the tangled web surrounding Dalton. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford, and caution became her constant companion. Every conversation, every shared smile, every invitation for coffee or study sessions became a battleground where Jocelyn had to maintain her cover while probing for the truth hidden just beneath Emma's polished exterior. In the depths of her mind, Jocelyn began sketching a new plan. One that intertwined her mission with the unraveling of Emma's secret life. She knew that to reach Dalton, she might have to go through Emma. Either by gaining her reluctant cooperation or by exposing her vulnerabilities. But more than that, Jocelyn sensed that whatever secret Emma was guarding could either destroy the mission or deliver an even greater prize than the organization had originally imagined. The stakes were no longer confined to completing a single task, they now involved navigating a complex web of espionage where one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. And as she set her next moves into motion, Jocelyn understood that success would demand more than cunning, it would require betraying someone who, despite everything, was beginning to feel dangerously like a friend.